pain is an unavoidable part of human life, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, anxiety that comes from the collective potential futures that we have on this world. There are just many ways in which we can experience pain. And in this interview, we are meeting the beautiful Cynthia Abulafia, who is an author and educator and yoga therapist who works with what she calls the energy of the divine feminine to restore the experience of embodiment through the 4 aspects of the heart, and how it is that we can really embrace the non-separation of ourselves from our wholeness and move away from this up and out, becoming something beyond, but really embrace the wholeness of the human experience through our pain, through those pieces that we often want to avoid. And so how can we face the fear that comes with pain and move through it so that we can be more whole and feel more loving towards yourself, to others, and to life itself? Enjoy this wonderful conversation with Cynthia. Allow your heart to listen. I'm very honored that we have a wonderful author, educator, yoga therapist, and worker with the goddess. That wonderful energy of the divine feminine and how that's moving through us at this time for us to deepen our embodiment and really be together, understanding and holding one another through this beautiful time of transition that may not feel so beautiful. And Cynthia Abulafia is a gorgeous, radiant woman that I'm really honored to bring on to hear her words and what she has to share with us. And I'm really intrigued as to how you've merged a journey of understanding history of different sacred spiritual lineages with our modern world and framework of science in particular. So I'd love it if you could start a little bit with that journey towards how you've merged those huge, vast areas into your path of working with the goddess.
That term science is fraught, I think. It's an interesting term. I would perhaps go out on a limb and argue that many of the traditions and sacred lineages that took the time to write down sacred texts would have absolutely called themselves scientists. I would also maybe even say that there are parts and pieces to those wisdoms and those traditions that our modern science hasn't yet touched. So science is such a big topic, and the way that I look at it is that it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's one of the ways that we pour our curiosity into the world and come back to our bodies. Well, what's the body? Well, I can study a science about that under many different banners or categories. And at the same time, science is a way that we can have faith in something, where nowadays so many people are leaving the sanctified walls of religion, for example, and they still need something to be devoted to. And I think that science is that for many, many people, more people than even are sometimes willing to admit. So for me, I don't, it's not so much that I don't see a distinction, but I do see areas of opportunity, maybe, both in spirituality and religion, and also in science. I think that bridges and more bridges could be built in those worlds. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the way that I see any scientific model, no matter how committed that model is to what I call the matter model, which is usually what science is, the matter model, right? It's like if I can see it, if I can bite it, touch it, taste it, like if I can break it, if I can look at it under a microscope, then it exists, nothing else does. You know, if it's outside of what can be tested, burned, bent, or brushed, or looked at, then it doesn't exist. And that I'm willing to challenge. I'm willing to challenge the matter model.
That I guess it reminds me of kind of the mechanistic view of science, right? You know, and say like the aspects of physics, right, that were very mechanistic and to do with what's of this world, the physics of this world, and then moving into the quantum fields and understanding that there's something more that we are discovering. And that brings me to part of the Gene Keys teachings, where we remember that the original scientists, many of the minds that have formed what we now look at the world through, of that more material modeling way of thinking, we're actually really just curious, you know, and the scientific mind is based on just the curiosity of how do things work? What can I understand? What is there to discover? And many of them actually had a capacity to tap into the unseen in order to then realize and explain the seen. And so it's like we've lost some of that rootedness in the curiosity, in the unexplainable. How can we explain it? The different paradigms and perspectives that science can offer us as it grows and as it evolves. And like you say, that therefore shows how science in our Western understanding is catching up with maybe more traditional sciences of other traditions that have understood energetics and therefore a spiritual element, whether energetics needs to be spiritual or not for those people who don't connect with spirituality, which not everyone does. You know, as you say, you know, that material model piece doesn't need to be spiritual, but it can be. There's scientists who are both, who are not, and who are. And so there's a merging, though, I guess, is what I see is starting to happen, of one of the curiosity starting to come alive again.
Yeah, I think you could be on the right track there. The way that I describe the heart in my book is that we have these 4 layers of vibratory existence. Vibration comes into form. It's vibration. That's the goddess. The goddess is vibration, movement. And when we look at the heart, the vibration pattern is there. Expand, contract, pause. When we look at vibration coming into form, it has these emanations. It kind of gets more and more concrete as it moves into the layers of being. And the outer world, the kind of elemental world, that the outermost rung of existence, the most baked part of existence, the most hardened part of existence, right? Like the thing that most Western sciences are interested in is a layer of this emanation from the heart center out into reality that then comes back again. And for me, the way that I look at that is that in that outer layer is very useful. It's very useful to interact with the elements, with the physical, with the body, to go to the doctor when you need to go to the doctor, right? Like to know when to go to the doctor. And that's not a problem. I think where it gets sticky is that we can get stuck on a single layer of the heart's being. And when we get stuck on that matter model or that scientific model, we might say things like, only this exists. Nothing else exists. There's no deity, there's no God. When I die, that's it. I'm out. Like dust to dust kind of a thing. But we can get stuck on any layer of vibratory existence. So the next layer down would be in the models that I study would be thought and emotion. So thought and emotion are vibratory experiences for us. And people who live on that layer of existence might say something like, no, it's not matter that is only true. It's the fact that your thoughts are creating your reality. It's the fact that your emotions, your stress response is creating health or dis-ease. Dis-ease is more a function of your thoughts and your emotions, right? And there's a very big movement around that layer of reality right now. Thoughts and emotions are creating your reality. It's so maybe the therapist will help you to unpack the thoughts and the emotions that are creating the stress and the dis-ease, the discomfort in your system that is having a physical effect, right? But
Yeah.
you can also take that vibratory essence a layer more subtle than thoughts and emotions, as you know, right? Like you can go more subtle than thought and emotion. We can go into intuition, kind of like the pre-thinking mind, all of these, it's like the blessing forth of information that comes unbidden, right? This channeling or psychic information, or even just, I don't know, I'm going to turn left here instead of right. It could just be that kind of simple intuition. And for some people, you can get stuck on the level of intuition also, and say only this level is true and real, and don't go to the doctor. Only go to the psychic to see what's happening. Only go investigate your past lives, and that'll tell you what's going on with you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have the layer even under that, the fourth, which is the void, which is the stillness out of which the vibration arises. And guess what? We can get stuck in the void too. We can be so enamored with the void that we say something along the lines of, only stillness exists. If you can think, hear, feel, smell, touch, taste, your thoughts are not real, your emotions are not real, your body is not real, see that you are the ground of being. See that you are only the ground of being. I'm going to show you all the techniques to transcend. And anything that arises out of that ground is an illusion. It's a distraction. Sometimes called Maya, sometimes called, actually, it's given even harsher names than that, evil, right? Sometimes it's considered like a very terrible thing, this great grand illusion that's arising out of the void. So, what I call the goddess is to remove our preference for which layer we're vibrating in, so that we become the great instrument of the heart, able at any moment to play any layer of that vibratory existence without preferring one over the other. So, like, some days I might have some pain and I'm like, I'm going to go see a doctor. And that's okay. And some days I might say my intuition is telling me to pay attention to this pattern that feels karmic, and to be okay with that. And I think that for me, it's really that's the practice of where am I hitched? Where am I holding on to? Is there a layer of the vibration which is not playing the instrument of my heart, that it's like I'm stuck on this one chord over and over and over again, and I'm not able to access these other chords. And for me to be able to play the whole heart is just, it's beautiful. And then we become an instrument to reality. I think that that includes everything. That includes science. It includes dream and deep sleep. It includes memory. Um, and that's what I call the goddess, because, you know, the ground of being, the stillness, expand, contract, pause. The ground of being is God. The transcendent experience is God. And we've held a lot of bias saying only that's true.
And that bias, it makes, there's a part of this that makes me see, a lot of the bypassing, a lot of the desire to walk the path of going into the cave, of needing to isolate, that we grow by being on our own. And actually, in another one of the interviews in this series, it came up as well in terms of the monk, or being in community, and this being a time of us learning to be together, rather than needing to sit in the cave, and to walk the path together as a collective, for that consciousness to elevate through all of us, for that heart awakening. And I very much, the way that I'm shown the awakenings that are happening, the consciousness is the heart expansion. It's all we're doing is feeling more, letting that heart open, and that takes us to those subtler realms of feeling that we can drop into, right? And for some people, they can be louder, and that cannot be helpful too. So, like you say, understanding which ones got the predominant attention for the day, and how to tend to that, in our daily lives, in our daily interactions, how our daily life is helping us see that and navigate opening and softening. And I feel a very musical tone from you, like how to kind of sing a more beautiful song in harmony together, as opposed to a kind of ruckus of drunk brawl kind of singing that
Oh,
you might
yeah.
have if it's not in harmony.
Oh, yeah. When the instrument of the heart is all chaos and you can't even hear the chords, it hurts. Like, it
Mm.
really hurts. And so I kind of feel like life is constantly giving us an opportunity to take the cleaning rag and dust off the strings, and not always pleasantly. It's not always like, hey, this is going to be really fun, right? To like tend to the instrument today. Sometimes it's like, this is not going to be a fun
Yeah.
dusting off, a cleaning of the instrument. But life is so generous that it gives these lessons over and over and over again. And so it's kind of like, hey, today I might pay attention to something on this level, something on that level. Today I might put my hand on my body. When was the last time our body was so sacred to us? Like, the body is so sacred. Now, not leaving my family, not walking away and letting it go. I call this let it go spirituality, this heading off into the wild woods and leaving it all behind. I mean, that is the old model. The old model is the patriarchy of spirituality, which is only possible when stillness and transcendence is more better than, more better than form. And it's not. So when we come back out of the woods and into the home, it is going to be loud. It's going to be noisy. Like, sometimes you're walking out of the forest into a bar and you're like, what just happened? There's noise in here. There's chaos in here. What's going on in here? So that's where I like to work. Is we have so many tools
Mm.
to climb the ladder up and out of form, up and out of the body. And we've gotten really good at those tools. But we do not have the tools to take that same ladder and climb back down the ladder into the body as sacred. Let's go back to that same analogy. We don't have the tools to walk out of the forest and into the bar, especially if we've been out in the forest for a long time. If I've been out there floating in the transcendent realms and doing my own work, where, to be totally honest, it's pretty easy to do the work when you don't have distractions.
Mm-hmm.
And then you come into the town, you come into the city center, and it's harder to do the work. And that's where the tools need to start coming into our spirituality to help us climb back down into the body, into the breath, into curiosity. I think curiosity is our first, middle, and last tool. Honestly, it is the tool. It's like the capital T tool, curiosity. And and I say that because everybody has it. It's non-preferential, it's non-denominational. It doesn't even choose a time of life, right? Like, what's the most charming thing about our children?
Curious.
They're
They're
curious.
curious, right? Everything's a constant like,
What is that? What is that? Yeah, they're curious. So, like, curiosity is our superpower. We were born with it. And when we live in a society, when we come out of an ancestral patterning or a collective patterning that says, don't be curious, do not ask those questions, sit down. If you're going to ask questions, here's a list of questions you're allowed to ask. Nothing off list, please. And of course, the implicit threat in that is if you ask the wrong questions, you're going to get kicked out of the tribe. You're going to risk no longer being loved by mom and dad. You're going to risk no longer being loved by your community, by the elite, by the powers that be. And so it's scary. And so we shut down our curiosity. And then we get very rigid. And so the only way to counter that, to come out of the woods and into the bar, is into the public space, is to take our curiosity with us. It's so funny because somebody just asked me this question in a workshop recently, actually. Like, I feel so comfortable in nature. I feel so expansive when I'm in the trees. And then I come inside to like my work and I don't want to speak. I don't want to say anything. I feel so scared. And it's true, right? Like,
and it reminds me of there's a few pieces with the curiosity and how that can help us make the transition. I mean, I was a lawyer for a while, and one of the key concerns to me, I worked at very cutting edge work of deals that had never been done before. And so for me, curiosity, right? How do we make something work? How could we create something new and work out how the law could make that happen? So I was a curious lawyer. That was what I was interested in as a lawyer. But I'd lost it in the rest of my life, right? In relationships, curiosity in relationships, because of the dynamics that might happen, right? And so we can lose it in areas, but we can maintain it in others. And as transitions happen in life, we often forget curiosity from that fear of the change. And I'm very grateful that when I had my brain injury and the curiosity of being a lawyer couldn't work anymore because it was too painful to think, let alone like that, the curiosity of who was I becoming? Who and what was I experiencing? And laughing at myself, because curiosity loosened up a lot of all of those worries that I used to have. It made me release work, like caring about the interpretation, about the response, about the reactivity. And that curiosity could lead me into uncovering new things to do in my life, new connections, new ways. And if they didn't work, didn't matter. Like a little child, as you say, like you fall over, And, you might cry for a moment and be like, oh, that hurt. And then you forget about it and you get on to the next thing that you're curious about. And that naturally awoke. And I'm very lucky. Like, I can't say it naturally awoke. I did work quite hard, to be honest, to cultivate not being negative and feeling sorry for myself. And that was a very conscious piece of work to not go into victim mode. But a lot of people in transitions in life, that can be the piece, right? Is that the curiosity goes because they're like, I want the steps. I want to know that it's going to work out, that I'm going to be safe, that I'm not going to get kicked out of the tribe. And so it's very easy as we feel change to lose that curiosity. And right now, with so much change around us, it's wanting to hunker down and make things secure and controlled and clear and defined. And really, what we're needing is to invite in that curiosity as things change, as things unfold, and be curious about, okay, well, I don't know what's going to happen with this. Just because that's happened doesn't mean it has to go that way. Like, how else could it go? How else could I feel about the way that things are turning out? And to really encourage that childlike curiosity and that innocence sometimes to start to come through. And I'm curious, in particular, as I say all of this, the kind of the feeling of awakening that people can have that can really dysregulate them, where what we're saying can make sense in some situations, and some people might be able to tap into that curiosity. But when you feel so overstimulated and so overwhelmed and kind of bombarded, infiltrated by lots of that energy, what's your perspective of how someone can tap into that curiosity when they are in such a overwhelmed awakening state? Because it's scary.
Yeah, it is. I think that, first of all, kudos if anybody's going through that. It takes a lot of courage and bravery to even, stay centered, stay with the breath. I don't think adding more to an overwhelmed system is generally wise, right? So sometimes it's not so much about adding on practices or even frankly adding on curiosity at that point. I think if somebody is in an active, and I would call it spiritual emergence, sometimes I use the term spiritual crisis, right? Like when we're in that, and I've been working with people for 20 years in this, because I've had this for over 20 years, right? Kundalini Awakening in the least friendly of ways. No, I did not come to spirituality because it looked pretty on the outside and then I climbed my way in. I came in through a rather difficult series of turnings. And yes, like you said, hard work. So I think acknowledgement is huge. Like sometimes we carry this conditioning that we don't see in us into our spirituality, which is like I'm cut off from the divine. I'm not whole. I'm broken. I'm separate. And I need to repair something to get back to the divine, right? And from my perspective and from the teachings of goddess traditions, it's a fallacy to be separated from the divine. It's only possible to be separated from the divine if the divine is something that you are not, which is stillness. Now, if somebody says God is stillness, God is salvation, and you're not that, that to me isn't spirituality, that's kingship. I now have to pray to the king. I have to pray to the king that's going to save me. Right? But if instead I stop bargaining with that whole schema and I stop believing that I'm separate, or I just perhaps entertain the possibility that I'm not separate, but that I am whole and complete. I think that that's a good place to start. Like, what's your starting line here? Don't need to dismantle it all at once. Life will give you so many opportunities to dismantle. We're gonna get so many activations, and the moment we think we're done with an activation, like tomorrow's gonna happen, and there's gonna be, right? It's the turning and the turning, right? It's so always having this ability to come back to the self and remember, I am whole and complete. I'm whole and complete. I started off whole and complete. I think that that's where it's the most useful to talk about the transcendence bias, is just how deeply we've wedged this idea into ourselves. It's not just in the monotheistic Abrahamic, Greco-Abrahamic religions that we've done this, right? The Greco-Abrahamic religions are only one stream of transcendence bias. You then have the entire Eastern iteration of that, which is Buddhism and yoga, and right, it's you are not this, you are not that. Now if you go deeper and deeper and deeper, and the model allows it, and not all of the models allow it, there's many different yogas. There are hundreds of yogas. There's not just one, nor is there one classical yoga. That's a made-up term, made up by the modern world. That's not even close to true. Yoga can be followed for power, for liberation, to possess someone. Yoga can be used by kings as a tool of yoga has 1,000 different definitions. So then we leave the one for the other, and yet the bias stays with us and it gets reinforced. You need to see that you're not this, you're not that, you're not this, you're not the things. Okay, I can do those practices, but then where are the teachings that tell me, hey, but by the way, from the very beginning and the outset, you are whole and complete. And this journey that you're taking might be a combing of the knots. Your hair is all knotted and a mess and whatever. You take a comb and you comb it out, or the temple floor is really dusty and dirty. There's a lot of cobwebs in there. You take the broom and you sweep it out. Great, that is good work. But when did we get ourselves into a place where all we did was sweep? We never bothered putting flowers in the temple. Or it's all I'm doing, the analogy I use in my book is I've learned how to take on all these practices to do all the weed whacking. Well, I'm not that weed, and I'm not that weed, and I'm not that weed, and I'm not that. And so I'm going to pull it out of the ground. I'm going to close my eyes. I'm not going to pay any attention. I'm going to pull it. I'm going to not that, and then I'm not that, and I'm not that. And at a certain point, we've become such experts at pulling the weeds. But we've never bothered planting the garden. We've never bothered putting back into this now beautiful, enriching soil the beauty, the expression of this life. So if we start that I am whole and complete, that's kind of like planting the seeds. It's the ground is fertile. I'm whole and I'm complete. Yeah, there's work I'm going to do here. And in a spiritual emergence, when things are dismantling rapidly for us, it's useful to tend to something that's beautiful. And I don't even mean that metaphorically. I mean put on a piece of clothing that you find beautiful in whatever sexed body you're in. I mean buy flowers and put them in your house, or tend to an herb on your windowsill. I mean cultivate something that's beautiful. In the most physical, least spiritual, whatever we want to call spirit, in the most physical and mundane and easy to access way, include beauty. Include it.
Love that. You remind me of a practice I love to share with clients, which is seeing the world through eyes of love. And one of the ways that I did it when I was traveling, and whatever control I could have over my circumstances, I decided to do it through Instagram, which I'm not a big Instagram lover, but looking for things to see their beauty and to share how I saw their beauty was the focus of that as a project, right? To really cultivate and see it. So, it's simple, right? We mostly carry our phones. They have a camera on them. It's easy, right? You don't have to share it, right? Just even collecting it, sharing it with close friends, but it's like you say, it's finding a simple way to see that. And I think for me also what I find for that overwhelmed awakening experience is the permission to be still or to rest. If you can't be still, to find slowing down at least, and the beauty in slowing down, and the beauty in honoring that. Often the reason why we can't sleep is because we've forgotten what rest is. Our body doesn't remember it right now, and it's a remembering we need to bring back in consciously, is to honor when we need to actually give ourselves that down rest. And in that, we can see more beauty. It gives space to see more beauty around us and to let it unfold, surprisingly, as well. And I guess the other one thing I was just thinking of for people who are not so keen on the spirituality side of remembering wholeness is just even the fact that we're made of the same elements that are on this planet, and that, my stepfather just passed away, and he was a science communicator, not religious, very strong atheist. We are made of the earth and we go back to the earth. And that is the same thing, right? We are complete, we're whole, we're made of what is already here. There's nothing different, there's nothing less than in us being made of what is the elements of this beautiful planet.
Yes, you can achieve that layer of understanding through any context. And resting in beauty is something that is philosophically analyzed. I have a whole chapter on this in my book, because a lot of times when we think rest, now let's unpack the stillness bias for a moment. Because the transcendence bias might tell us if you're not quiet in your mind, you're not resting. That rest equals going into stillness. But our lived experience shows us that there's this ability that we have to rest in pulsation. Surfers go to the ocean to feel the waves underneath them, and they have this quality of being able to rest by sitting on the surfboard on the ocean. And it's like this deep meditation of rocking with the body of the ocean. When I hold my animals, like dog, a cat, whatever the animal is, feeling the warmth of the skin and the breath, touching into the breath of my children. They're too big for me to hold them. They're teenagers, but I can look at them. But feeling them breathing or watching them breathing, I can rest in that. I can rest by listening to a beautiful or moving piece of music. I can rest in like the deep quality of savoring a piece of chocolate, whatever that is, right? Like this is the ability to rest in pulsation is vast. In Sanskrit, the term is Vishranti, to be able to rest in pulsation. And sometimes it's the rotating of the body, kind of like what Yoga Nidra does, right? It's the rotation, it's the immersion into the pulsation, it's the immersion into the rotation that allows a deeper quality of rest. And so just to like offer that these are the same thing, to rest sometimes is to drop into whatever your favorite form of pulsation is.
Beautiful. Thank you, Cynthia. And it's, it's helpful, I think, for people when they're in those moments of awakening and they're trying to, it's very easy to give yourself a hard time. Especially when it feels like there's so much going on, to be able to drop and find something. And, I know the working with vibration, and I sense that very musical kind of quality that follows breath, breath work with you as well, and the different types of breath. And, breath work's become a much bigger fashion in recent years. It is a really, really important tool, and there's many ways it can be used and abused by people in terms of helping us move through whatever the energies are that need to be moved, and finding that resonance and harmony in our vibration at whatever layer. But also sometimes people find the breath very scary and it's not a place that they can go to. And so really acknowledging the importance of just finding it in the ways that work for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Breath is the goddess. That's how it's described in some of the texts. The breath is her body. Her body is breath because she's pulsation. And one of the things that I like doing for my own self when I'm dysregulated is I just check in with my breath. I don't try to manipulate it. I think that manipulating the breath it's a whole different, it is a science. That's what these scientists were doing. They were working with the science, but there are so many things about the breath. Like this breath is shallow, this breath is ragged, this breath is warm, this breath is cool, this breath is spacious. This, so we can start to like name the breath. The breath has physical qualities to it. Now what you're doing is you're just applying curiosity to the thing that's already happening. You're not trying to change it. You're not trying to manipulate it. You're not trying to like huff it up. I know there's a lot of techniques out there that do that, right? To force an ab reaction. We can just check in with it. It's like this one's hot, this one's shallow, this one. And you know what's so generous about the breath is there's always another one. There's always another one. And so, like, yeah, we can also ignore it. Sometimes it's better to ignore it. And in one of the texts that names the breath as the goddess, it says that we're praying to her 21,600 times a day, which is how often we're breathing. So, like, it's there and it's not there. We can pay attention or not pay attention to it. And to train ourselves to pay attention to the breath without even needing to manipulate the breath can be an extraordinary act of kindness for the body, because it acknowledges that like we're not walking heads on sticks, that we have this body, and the body has temperature and it has texture and it has dimension and it has all of these different things about it. So even putting a hand on the chest and noticing, oh, it's moving. Oh, it's cool. Oh, it's warm, right? Like we wouldn't think of it so much, but these can be radical acts. And why not? So yeah, I think that for me, there's no such thing as like a technique or a not a technique. It's like we're in a body. We're in a body. This is a body. Like if you're listening to this, you're in a body. And so there's something interesting about that. Can we acknowledge that?
Sometimes when you're in a lot of physical pain, that can be really hard.
It can be really hard.
And, and I just want to say that because I know that there's a lot of people who listen who really are in a lot of physical pain. And, and that ability to be with, even without labeling, and just being with it, in my mind, it's Winnie the Pooh where they're sitting on the bridge waiting for the stick and Piglet comes and sits beside. It's sitting beside and just watching and being with the pain and being with the breath, with the pain. In the way that I work with breath work is that process. We sit and we be with it. We allow the breath to flow because that helps us to stay in flow. To notice if we're trying to hold or catch or control, just let it flow. And just even that, the noticing those changes in our breath, changes in where it's wanting to go as we sit with it, and especially with pain, because we'll redirect our breath. We'll do things with it to try and help hold the pain. And quite often, I hate to ever give anything that's like a rule or a universal approach, but when the breath moves through what is painful, it starts to help it to open. But again, it's not forcing the breath through it. It's allowing the breath to naturally move through it when it's ready. When you're ready for the breath to move through it, it will move. And if you try it too early, it creates more resistance. If you're trying to rush it, it creates more resistance. And so that's why, to me, like, there are techniques. I use a technique when I go free diving. It is a technique to hold my breath to free dive because I will die if I don't do that. I will swallow water and that won't be good. So there are breath techniques that are important for us to use in life. And sometimes, we need them sometimes to be strong, to lift something, to move something heavy. You need to brace your breath because it will give you that, but you don't need to brace your breath all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so well put. I really feel that.
Thank you.
It also ties in some of what we've been talking about, right? It's something to do with resting in pulsation. It has something to do with, I'm hearing, curiosity in the breath as curiosity, breath as a kind of form of empowerment, even. So, yeah, I think that it's a very interesting frontier to study. And being in pain doesn't preclude us from that. Yeah. And
it's almost an invitation into
it's
it.
almost an invitation. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And there's so many different forms of pain, right? There's physical pain, there's emotional pain, there's spiritual pain, there's intuitive pain. So just, we are complex. We
But
are
all of them,
complex.
all of them can be met with the breath, right? Whatever the thought is, whatever the emotion is, whatever the physical feeling is, all of that existential feeling, all of that's met with the breath because you're alive.
Right.
You're breathing, right? And that is the living experience.
Right.
And it's through breath that the awareness of the experience moves.
Mm-hmm. Breath beat, heartbeat. You know that the heart, you probably know the organ of the heart sits on the central tendon of the diaphragm.
Yeah.
And so I don't call it just breath. It's heartbeat, breath beat, heartbeat, breath beat. And they're syncing up all the time. So how we're flowing with breath is also how we're flowing with heartbeat. It's a very powerful thing to start to feel. For me, also, it allows me back into that quality of like wholeness and completeness, like the circulatory system, the heartbeat, breath beat. It is a system and it is whole. So there's something in that I think can be very powerful, welcoming to the body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And scary.
Mm-hmm.
I'm mindful of clients I've had who, when they feel that like full lift of an exhale and the diaphragm has that beautiful touch with the heart, it can feel overwhelming. For some people, it can feel like a panic attack. It can feel like they're going to lose all the control they're used to holding on to. And that can be very destabilizing. And so I guess in our talking about the experience of awakening, that can be a part of it, right? Is that inability to really exhale because of some of the feelings that come when we really get that heart connection, if we're not used to it, and we have to move into that gently.
Yes, I totally agree. In fact, I used to work very closely when I was doing a lot more yoga therapy with the hip flexors, because the diaphragm, the fingers of the diaphragm go down the spine, and the hip flexors fingers go, it's one system. You have this one system that's the breathing diaphragm into the hip flexors into the psoas. And just to let the leg bones sit deep in the pelvis can change the breath. There's so much that could be said about that, about the body. There's so many ways we could go there. And to acknowledge what you're saying, it's like, yes, 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 it can be so scary. Like, right. It can also be this, like, what's the first thing we do when we're born? Right? It's like we take a bath. And those are not always pleasant entryways. So we're constantly going over these thresholds. That's what the threshold is. The bardo is a threshold. We're constantly going over thresholds all the time. Every breath is a kind of a threshold. And there are experiences that come with that. Yeah. I agree with you. Go slow. Like, this is, I did try to rush I probably am a good poster child for how to make a spiritual awakening worse. Because I spent 10 solid years just all out fighting it. Um, but I learned a lot, right? It was meant to be that way, of course. And at the same time, it's like, yeah, I think that there's great wisdom in being able to say simple things like, I really feel this point about beauty matters. Like, I, I, I sometimes I work with people, they kind of find me and they start reaching out to me and texting me like I'm going through this thing. And more often than not, one of the first things I'll say to somebody at this point, now it's been a long time, at this point, I'll say, like, you know, it, if I'm reading their energy and they're a very female person, I'm like, put on a dress. Or like, it's like, I know that sounds so shallow almost, but it's not. It's an act of radical freedom. Or like, whatever that means to you, right? Whatever it means to you to express yourself in a way that is beautiful. Because at the end of the day, the way that I see it is that the goddess is you. You are the goddess. She's looking out of these eyes. She's touching through this skin. She's breathing through this body. And so we're in this relationship of coming home to the wholeness of, like, this heart. And, this coming from somebody who I didn't start off thinking any of these things. And I don't think you need to be terribly spiritual to go through that. You could say life is looking through your eyes.
Yes. And I think what that brings me to with what you just shared is that, when I say eyes of love, like, that's the soul looking out. That's how it sees things. And it's taking off the nerves to the brain story of, like, I see. And it reminds me of the teachings in A Course in Miracle. What I see is not what's there. It's that the soul sees. And can we stop seeing through those veils until we really see what's truly there, which is so beautiful and it's full of so much love. And it's always flowing around us for us to drop and see it there. And often especially if you're not looking for a spiritual path and things start to happen to you. And both of us clearly share that background of discovering it as part of the journey. I think just being really practical, being really grounded, just being really in this body, like the honoring the body temple, you know, whatever it is that helps you see beauty in the world, see beauty in yourself, you know, and self-love is not a little thing. It's made into such a petty, like, oh yeah, you're into self-love. It's not. It's probably one of the greatest acts of grace you could give yourself, is to really see your own beauty and to really honor it and reflect that out.
I think we only dismiss self-love because we come from sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands of years of conditioning that says that we're not supposed to do that. So I don't think that that's natural. I think what's natural is self-love. And I think what's unnatural is the hammering of this teaching over and over again through the lines of culture and ancestry that say don't do that. And then we have to like respond to that somehow. So we might ridicule, oh, that person's just expressing self-love. Oh, that's a protection technique. That's protection. You're protecting yourself. You're protecting something that hurts. But there we go again. Life is doing that thing, which is showing you an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. And those moments of distinguishing beauty to being different from self-image and validation through image, which obviously sits with our, I already mentioned Instagram, that very visual, there's a way to look, there's a way to be seen. And really differentiating when we're looking at beauty, we're not looking at as external validated form of beauty, but like what you find beauty and seeing that in yourself and in the world. And the more you see it in yourself, the more it gets reflected back. And so, I just really want to honor, what you're saying around beauty and how important it is.
Beauty dismantles conditioning. If it's being used for compulsion, it's not beauty. That's something else. That's reinforcing the conditioning. So beauty is anything that dismantles the conditioning and inspires reverence. For an artist, beauty might be sitting in front of a great work of their own art, of somebody else's art. Beauty might be going to a theater and feeling the pulse of the audience, right? Like beauty might be looking at the space between two clouds in the sky. So the definition of beauty does need to be named. I actually think that defining things and giving language to things is extremely, that's what I do. What I do is define and give language to things, because the divine feminine has been so misdefined. So given, just the patriarchal languaging has just been lifted and then put straight on top of the divine feminine. And then we wonder why, why girls are naked on Instagram and talking about the divine feminine. It's like, oh, because it's not that that is the compulsion. And and if you got to do that to decondition something on your way, then keep going, like great and beautiful and good. And at the same time, know what beauty is. Beauty is that in us which dismantles the conditioning. Beauty is that which we have access to. It's the ability to rest in pulsation, to flow the breath through our knees when our knees are, so it's very important to define these terms.
Thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, really important note. So I'm really mindful of your time. And I know we've gone over a little bit from our planned amount of time as well. So I'm really grateful for you giving us this extra time as well. And I just, personally, I have such curiosity about your awakening experience and that beginning part. But in honor of your time, you don't have to share anything about that. But I'd love it if there's I will give you the opportunity to share anything more about your book. Obviously, we'll put the links below so that if people want to grab Cynthia's book, Embodying the Goddess, that was released earlier in 2026, you can do so through all of those links. I just want to make that super simple so Cynthia doesn't have to say any of that stuff. But also, I'm really curious about what lights you up.
What lights me up? I like listening for the heartbeat in any situation. In a conversation, I like listening for the heartbeat. And that lights me up. It's kind of, I don't mean for that to sound so evasive, because I really mean it. I think that when we are a living instrument, when we feel the instrumentation of the heart, and there are all these different layers of the vibration, it really starts to play with reality. And every situation has a heartbeat. Every conversation has a heartbeat. Every turn, every, meal, so I like that. I like being engaged. I like turning toward. It's not always fun, but I like it. As for spiritual awakening, spiritual experience, I think I'll just say that comes in so many different shapes and sizes that I'm happy to share a story about it someday, and I do a little bit in my book, very small, a little bit in my book, not too much, but I do name it, and I'll say that I don't think it's quite important to sensationalize those experiences, because then we start to create these well, am I even having a spiritual experience? I'm not seeing the bright lights. I'm not getting the channeling. I'm not doing the right. And it's yeah, you are. If life is showing you a turn and it's asking you to return, then yes, that's what that is. I think that life is conspiring to bring us back to that listening. And I don't know if that's spiritual. I don't know if that's ordinary life. I don't know if that's transcendent. I don't know if that's imminent. I have a feeling it's all of the above. It's just what's happening.
Thank you, Cynthia. That was a perfect answer. And I think because in the importance of defining beauty and in defining some things, as I've already said, I think there's also a really important piece about not taking away labels that we use, because it creates unhelpful expectations and can get us caught in the trap of trying to define our experience rather than just being in the experience. And we may need to understand aspects of what the experience are, but sometimes those labels aren't going to get you to understanding it. They may help at certain points along the way, but as you said, life will bring you whatever the awakening is in whatever way it is. And you'll find, if you're on a spiritual awakening, you'll find yourself moving towards spirituality. And if you're not, then that's not the path, right? It's a different form of spirituality that's flowing through you as an embodied experience. May you stay, experiencing life just as life, but just to really honor what's been coming through you. So thank you for that answer. It was a beautiful way of sharing it. And I don't think it's evasive in the slightest to say listening to the heartbeat, listening for that, that's showing a desire for a depth of connection in any situation. Really tending to the presence of what's there. So it's a really beautiful answer. Thank you. So thank you so much, Cynthia. As I said, everyone, grab her book below, learn more about her, follow her on Instagram or TikTok. And she's got a great Substack account as well. So go there if you want to follow her on Substack as well. And just a real honor, a real privilege. Thank you, Cynthia, for your time. And thank you for overrunning to give us a little bit more of your amazing wisdom through the goddess. And it's just been a real pleasure. And I hope that we can stay connected in some way.
Yeah, really has been a joy. Thank you.
Thank you for joining. Have a wonderful day.